All right. Hi, I am Joe Purdue, here to interview Dr. Sahar Khamis. She is an Egyptian American immigrant, and this is for IMMR 400. So, Dr. Khamis, would you like to give us a short introduction of yourself?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Joe. I really appreciate it. And I wish you best of luck with your project and all your coursework.
Thank you.
So my name is Sahar Khamis. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland, College Park. I'm also an affiliate professor in the Department of Women's Studies and an affiliate professor also with the Consortium on Race, Gender, and Ethnicity at the University of Maryland, College Park. My work deals a lot with the Arab and Muslim media with a special focus on cyber activism or the use of social media and new media for the purpose of bringing social and political change and reform in this part of the world. I also have a lot of interest in gendered identities or how women are using social media and new media for the purpose of expressing their own identities and also participating in wider socio-political transformations and movements. That's me in a nutshell. So as for my, who I am as a person and where I grew up, I'm the eldest of four daughters. I was born in an upper middle class family in Cairo, Egypt. I will not exactly mention the year I was born, but I will just say it was some time ago. And my family always had a great value attached to the idea of, intercultural communication and being open to the rest of the world, which I believe influenced me to a very large degree. When I was only 15 years old, they did something which was very courageous, I think, of any parents, when they encouraged me to join a program, the AFS program, which is American Field Services, whereby I was able to actually come to the United States for the very first time in my life as a 15-year-old to live with a host family in Blair, Ohio. Blair is a very small town in Ohio. And I lived there for a whole year as a foreign exchange student with this host family. That was a great, I would say, turning moment or turning life experience. Really, it changed my life dramatically because from this moment onwards, I felt like I have a wider perspective on the rest of the world. I have an interest in, opening up internationally and being able to expose myself to other cultures and new ideas and to really understand new cultures. And at the end of my high school year, that's where I got my high school diploma from Blair High School in Ohio. When I was leaving, I said to myself, I'm going to come back again to the United States of America because I like this country so much. And that happened many years later when I came in 2007 as a faculty member in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland, which is where I've been working for the last 14 years between 2007 and 2021. And I'm now a tenured professor, so it is my lifetime or lifelong plan to actually be here. So after this very important experience, I went back to Egypt, and I was faced with some tough decisions to make because my grades were very high. I had the option of joining the Faculty of Medicine at Cairo University and becoming a pediatrician, which was one of my dreams, or joining the Department of Mass Communication at the American University in Cairo to study communication and to become a university professor, which was also one of my dreams. So my father said, how about doing both? And I was like, both? I'm going to study medicine and communication at the same time. He said, yeah, you're a hard worker. Why not try both of them? And I tried both of them. And after a few weeks, I made a decision. It was not a very difficult decision to make, that I wanted to study communication. So I went along with the Department of Communication at the American University in Cairo, which is where I got my BA. And then later on, I got a graduate diploma in television journalism and then got my master's degree also from the Department of Communication at the American University in Cairo. I worked for a number of years with different media organizations, including NHK, which is Japanese Broadcasting Corporation in their Cairo office. I worked with the Wall Street Journal as a news assistant in their Cairo office as well. And I worked with many other different organizations, Al-Wafd, which is one of the big newspapers in Egypt, Al-Ahram, which is the most important daily national newspapers. I worked with them in the foreign desk. So I did have also a glimpse of professional journalistic work while also doing my graduate studies and studying for my master's degree. Then after that, I moved to England with my late husband. He actually was doing his PhD at the University of Manchester. So I joined him there and I did my own PhD in mass media and cultural studies at the University of Manchester. And that's where I discovered this amazing world of quote unquote ethnography and qualitative research. So I must say that before that in Egypt, Most of my studies were very much quantitative in my master's degree, like positivistic, correlations and statistics. And I must say, I never fell in love with this type of research. When I was in Manchester, that's when I discovered a whole new world of doing qualitative ethnographic research, which I really fell in love with. And it became my own academic orientation in terms of doing my research moving forward as a qualitative ethnographic feminist researcher. So I spent 4.5 years in Manchester. I got my PhD in mass media and cultural studies. I went back again to Egypt and I taught at different places. I taught at Cairo University. I taught at Ain Shams University. I taught at the American University in Cairo as well as an adjunct faculty. And all along, all the time, I was always keeping in mind, the idea of coming back again to America. Remember, when I left, I was 16 years old after I finished my high school diploma from Ohio, but I always had this dream inside me. I traveled after that to Qatar, University of Qatar, for 3 years, and I was the head of the Mass Communication and Information Science Department in Qatar University. It was 3 years over there, and in my third year, that's when I saw the ad that said that they're looking for some kind of scholar with an expertise in Middle East media. And I said to myself, I think I know someone who might fit the criteria for this ad. So I decided to actually apply for the position. They had a phone interview with me first, which was like great. And then they said, now we're going to invite you on campus for an interview. And I was a little bit perplexed because I didn't know the interviewing process in America or how it worked. And I thought the telephone interview was more than enough, right? And of course, the interview process involved like giving a lecture and like giving a public talk and meeting with the dean and meeting with the department chair and with the faculty and with the graduate students. Like 1.5 days where you're completely, totally exhausted, like really a lot of stuff because they need to know you well before they hire you. Fortunately, I was hired for the position. And of course, the rest is history, as they say. I've been in the Department of Communication then for the last 14 years. And I must say, I really had a lot of amazing experiences here. It's been a great step in terms of building my professional and academic career. My publication record, skyrocketed really after coming to Maryland. It's a very competitive, very intellectually stimulating place where you're always pushed to do the most, to produce more, to write more, to think more. And I had amazing students like yourself, a lot of great undergraduate and graduate students at the master's level and at the PhD level. And, that's really a great experience, has been a great experience for me. I always had another dream, really, which is being a television anchor woman and presenting my own program or my own show. Although that did not turn into a complete reality, it was partially fulfilled through some of my own media appearances as a media commentator, media analyst, public speaker. And I also have my own program, which is called The Bridge, which I have been presenting first only as a radio format, and then it turned into audiovisual. And now I took the courageous step finally of doing it Facebook Live, and at the same time also having it broadcast on radio. So I'm, in a way, inching towards this kind of unfulfilled dream of having my own, television program, because this is something that has always lived inside me, right? So I really need to get this out of my system. I need to make it happen one way or the other. And I think that I took some steps in this direction. But of course, I think that there is still one more step that needs to be taken, like making it even more, I think, professionally polished, I should say, maybe more on a larger scale. A lot of stuff needs to be done, but it's very time and effort consuming. And obviously I have my teaching and I have my, online classes and I have my research. So much is going on, right?
Yes.
But that is a dream that is still living inside me. And I'm still hoping to get it completely fulfilled one day soon.
Yes, I think you will, definitely. With how, like you said, moving up to the Facebook Live and everything like that, I think you'll just keep on going and going. So
I hope so. So that's me really in a nutshell, and I'll open the platform for you to ask me any other follow-up questions you want.
Okay, thank you. So when you came over to Blair, Ohio, what was, if you can recall, like your initial impression, like of America, like maybe perhaps what you thought of it before coming over, and then any maybe expectations that were validated or things like that?
Yes, that's an excellent question, because I always say stereotyping is a two-way process. It's never a one-way process. We always talk about, the Arab and Muslim stereotypes in the West, right? And how people think about the Arab world and think about, people are living in tents or they're living on, in the desert, or they're riding camels, or women are only oppressed and they have no voice. These are all stereotypes, and unfortunately, the media, I must say, as a communication professor, plays a role in terms of perpetuating and spreading many of these falsehoods and stereotypes and misconceptions. But it is also true that people living outside the Western world, outside the US, also have their own skewed misperceptions and stereotypes about America or about the West in general. And that is also unfortunately perpetuated through the media. So in the media, watching soap operas at the time, like, Dallas and others, at my time, Knox Landing and Dallas and all that stuff, like, they always gave these, images of families living in mansions. So everybody has a huge swimming pool, and they're always throwing this big lavish parties and always partying and dancing and, just having this kind of spoiled lifestyle. And I was hosted in this very small, beautiful but small home over a hill in Ohio. The family are very much hardworking, middle class American parents. The father was a retired school teacher. The mother was a retired nurse. And there was nothing that looked like these soap operas. Like, I was like, where's the mansion? Where's the swimming pool? Where are the lavish parties?
Yeah.
People are doing nothing except dancing and just playing and having a good time. These were hardworking people, just like, I know now, like 99.9% of American people are very hardworking people. They spend their time working, not partying, right? So the image I really got through the media was very different, and I must say very much stereotypical of American society in a way that did not reflect the reality of the hardworking middle class American people that I know represent the majority of the American people. But that's not what you see in the media. So I always tell my students in all my intercultural communication classes, be very careful about this whole process of stereotyping. And please remember, it's a two-way process, not a one-way process. How we, as for example, Arabs or Muslims or Middle Easterners, are being portrayed or misrepresented in Western media on one hand, and also how Western people, including the American people, are also misrepresented and stereotyped in many inaccurate ways in the media as well.
Yes, thank you. No, those are some outstanding points. Particularly, like you said, the stereotyping, it is a two-way street. And did you feel when you were in Blair that people stereotyped you at all? Did you have interactions or memories where you felt that people had looked at you differently or treated you differently?
Yes, at that time when I was 15 years old, I was not wearing the hijab, which is the Muslim headscarf. I started wearing that after I finished my undergraduate school. So I was like maybe 21 or something like that. But when I was in Blair, Ohio, I was 15. I told you I came when I was 15, and I spent a whole year over there. And I skipped actually 1 year. I should mention that in my graduate school, in my studies there. It was very funny because the school principal asked for my transcript, right? So when I gave him the transcript of the courses I was taking in Egypt, he looked at it and he was stunned. He was like, wait a minute, did you take 15, 16 classes in one academic year? And I was like, yeah. It was like physics, chemistry, biology, English, Arabic, French, algebra, you name it. It's like 15. He was like, this is unbelievable. You took all of these courses in 1 year. I was like, yeah. I said, no, we don't do that in our high school in the US. Like, you don't take that many courses. So in a way, that helped me to skip 1 year. So I got my high school diploma. I was only 16 because I skipped 1 year of high school because of this. Of course, the high school year for me in America was like a piece of cake. Like, I got less classes. The classes were fun. I took French, which I loved. I took, typing. At the time, it was not the computer typing. Now you're going to know how old I am. Because it was like the typewriter. At the time, it was a typewriter still, right? It was like in the 80s. And at the same time, I enjoyed oil painting. So I took oil painting classes. So at the time when my peers back in Egypt were stuck with the 15, 16 difficult subjects that they had to study for their own high school diploma, I was having a great time in Ohio, enjoying my oil painting and French and typing classes. And life was good. I'm taking, far less classes, which are fun courses. And I really loved it. And I skipped 1 year. So it was amazing. But going back to your question, I felt like I did not feel like so much quote unquote profiling as such. And maybe because at that time I was not wearing my identity on my sleeves, as they say, like the part about being visibly Muslim. But I was definitely the only brown girl in the school, I would say. Like, this is a small town in the Midwest. and everybody else was like, blonde hair and blue eyes, green eyes. I felt like I looked different in a way, but that did not bother me so much.
Hmm.
What bothered me is that I felt people did not know almost anything about Egypt or about where I came from.
Mm.
And that was obvious, like in some of the questions, like some of them would jokingly say, oh, so tell me, like, do you have cars in Cairo? Things like that. When I came to the US, actually, my older son had a similar experience when he was going to middle school, right? So
Hmm.
people were asking him, like, sometimes teasing him, or like, oh, so do you ride a camel back in Egypt?
Oh my
And I
goodness.
told him, don't be annoyed or don't be upset about it. Turn it into a joke. Say,
Hmm.
yes, of course, I have like a pet camel. His name is Chemo, and I always take him with me to class. And just turn it into some kind
Yes.
of, turn it into some kind of joke rather than being offended. But of course, the younger you are, right? The younger you are, the less capable you are in terms of dealing with these situations when you feel like you are different, or you are a stranger, or you
Hmm.
don't look like everyone else, or people ask you questions like, do you have cars back home, or do you ride a camel? So these questions, like when we get older, we can turn it into a joke or some kind of
Hmm.
laughter. We can even laugh about it, right? The younger you are, like, my son, when he came here
Hmm.
to the US, it's more difficult for you to cope with this situation. So there's also the element of age, generation, all of these factors. But overall, I believe like we all need to educate ourselves more about other cultures. And I would love to see the American educational system, honestly, include more than just American studies, American history, have more of a component of global,
Hmm.
communication. Like when I teach the course, like the class you took with me about, digital communication, intercultural dialogue, right? A lot of the students
Yes.
give me feedback like, I wish I had more classes like that, even at the high school level. you know I hear that a lot when I teach courses on the Arab media, courses
Hmm.
on Islamic discourses in the digital age, about intercultural communication. Always I get this kind of feedback from my students. I wish we had more classes like that, both at the high school level and also at the university level. So I
Hmm.
think this is an important niche that needs to be filled in terms of the American educational system, offering more courses and more classes that would have more of a global and international focus rather than only an American oriented focus.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, your class was such an eye-opening experience for me, and I agree with the sentiments of that other people were saying, where they wish they would have had other opportunities like that in high school, middle school, even. So
Thank you.
that is outstanding. Now, you said that after your experiences in Blair, Ohio, you knew that you wanted to come back to the United States. And can you maybe talk about that a little bit? What specifically attracted you to America? What made you want to come back?
Yes, I think it was a mix of different things. Like, it was my first snow experience. I've never ever seen snow in my life before. So you
Hmm.
can imagine like the look on my face when I woke up one morning as a 15-year-old, just opening the windows, like everything was white around. I was like, what? Like, there was no I think video recording in the modern way that we know it now.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I guess my host parents would have definitely videotaped this moment, right? And they were like, they were so mesmerized by my reaction, right? Thinking like,
Yeah.
oh my god, so America is a beautiful country. There's no question about it. It's a beautiful country, really. The nature, the beauty of the place itself, the different diversity. You get the snow, you get the rain, you get the beautiful hills.
Hmm.
Ohio is a very beautiful place, and so is Maryland and many different parts of America. There was
Hmm.
this part about the natural beauty, for
Hmm.
sure. The people are also very friendly people. I must say the American people are very friendly people. Like you feel that they have this kind of, because they come from many different parts of the world, right? So you feel like
Yes.
you feel like you're not a stranger, really. At the end of the day, you'll find people who are coming from different parts of the world, from Latin America, from the Middle East, from India, from Pakistan, from Africa, from many different parts of the world. So that helps you to also feel that you are more welcome. And they have this demeanor like, oh, let's have coffee together, let's go and have lunch, let's grab a cup of tea. It's not like that every part of the world. Like in other parts of the world, you always feel like there is a distance, and you always
Hmm.
feel like a stranger. You don't feel like you are really informally, so to speak, invited to just have this kind of, oh, let's have a chat over coffee. So that's something else I liked about America. Most importantly, I felt like this is a place where you can really express yourself. You can express your thoughts, your ideas freely. You can
Hmm.
write, you can invent, you can produce, you can really reach your maximum potential as a human being. And that pretty much became my story after coming to America. Like I look at my publications, I look at my record, I look at
Yes.
my professional achievements, and I feel like, whoa, this is really a place where you can, prosper, you can grow, you can
Mm-hmm.
develop as a person. There are
Mm-hmm.
no limitations in terms of, restrictions, basically, on
Yeah.
intellectual freedom or freedom of speech. I feel very badly for, peers and colleagues in other parts of the world who don't enjoy this amount or this space of intellectual and academic freedom to
Mm-hmm.
actually speak their mind and feel safe doing so. That is a very, very important point, in my opinion. I think one of the essays I wrote when I was in high school was called What America Means to Me.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this beautiful essay then as a 15-year-old saying, I really love this country because one, two, three, four, five. Of course, I did not frame it like I'm framing it now, so
Yes.
many years later, but I think the main ideas were there.
Wow, that's amazing that you were able to, like recognize and realize aspects of, that at the age of, 16. So that is, I think, really cool that then after that you sort of had not like a plan, but something that, like a goal perhaps, or an idea about maybe where, you were going to end back up, which you then fulfilled, by
Yes,
coming back to America.
yes.
So, you had your experience there in Blair, Ohio, which seemed to be really positive, which is great. And then you went back to Egypt. And then when you came to America to work at the University of Maryland, how did you feel your experience, like, you know, how you were treated here may have been differently, or may have been different compared to your experience in Blair, Ohio?
Of course, there's a big difference. I mean, Blair, Ohio was a small town. Like, even when I say Blair, Ohio, some people go like, where is Blair, Ohio? I'm like, I swear to you, it exists because I spent a whole year there and I got my high school diploma from there.
Yes.
So it is not like some kind of fantasy. I'm not making it up.
Hmm.
But it was a small town, right? It's a small
Hmm.
town and it's a small knit community. Like I said, most people like, were white middle class Americans. And,
Hmm.
as a 15-year-old, as I told you earlier, I felt like, yeah, I look different, right?
Hmm.
In Maryland, of course, the areas, the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, is very dynamic, very, hybrid, very diverse.
Hmm.
You walk in the street, and basically, you see people from all walks of life and from different parts of the world. The University of Maryland campus, of course, is huge, has 35,000 students and
Hmm.
faculty members from all walks of life and all different parts of the world. So this element, I think, of diversity and inclusion is definitely greater
Hmm.
in my experience moving to Maryland than it was back in Blair, Ohio,
Hmm.
when I was a high school student there. Yeah, but a lot of the the beauty of America, as I said, beautiful America, the beauty of the nature and the people, the warmth,
Hmm.
the friendly demeanor, that remains pretty much the same.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and you said because you hadn't started wearing the hijab until after you had finished your undergrad, did you felt that, as you had said, wearing your identification on your sleeve and then returning here to America, did you feel like you had experienced more positive feedback? Was there, negative feedback?
Yes,
If you could
yes.
detail that a little for
Right.
us.
I did not feel like it really created any kind of difference except after 2016. Like,
Mm,
the 4 years, between 2016 and 2020. That was a
yes.
very tough period, as I'm sure you can imagine, for different minorities, especially for Muslims and Muslim Americans. There was a huge rise in Islamophobia, like, attacks on mosques and Islamic centers,
Mm-hmm.
attacks on people who are visibly Muslim, like myself, who wear the hijab. I never ever felt that this issue was, making me different one way or another, except after 2016, actually. Like before that, I lived in America since 2007, and
Yeah.
I'd walk in the streets. I always lived in Silver Spring, Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
all the time I've been here. And I walk in the street, and I never felt like people would gaze at me or look at me
Yeah.
differently or treat me differently. That was never an issue. Except after 2016, when I actually had this one bad incident, that I was, walking out of the metro station in
Mm-hmm.
Silver Spring, and downtown Silver Spring is a very busy area. It was
Yeah.
8 p.m. It was not like too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get something out of my purse. And then this, I would say, maybe 45, 48, something like that, year old white man, he came rushing towards me and said something like, "Are you getting a gun out of your purse?" Like, what are you doing? Are you going to get a gun out of your purse? And I was absolutely shocked. Like, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I was scared that this can escalate into some kind of,
Yes.
a physical attack, or he might try to attack me. I just said to myself, okay, calm down, pretend that you don't understand what he said, that you don't understand a word of English,
Hmm.
and just basically walk by very calmly with no reaction, very neutral face. Don't show any kind of reaction. So that's what I did. I just walked by him as if I did not hear what he said. I did not understand what he said, and I just walked by. But I was like completely scared. He followed me with a trail of curse words, bad words, dirty words. And I was like, oh my God. I went home. I was really scared. I felt like, oh, why would this happen at
Yes.
8 p.m. in downtown Silver Spring, in a very crowded place? It would have never, ever happened before. So I think that this is not an isolated incident. Unfortunately, I heard, more horrific stories,
Hmm.
unfortunately, from members of the Muslim community, and I should say from other communities as well. Like, there
Hmm.
has been a surge in racism, xenophobia, sexism, anti-Semitism in these 4 years that a lot of minority groups and immigrants unfortunately suffered from. So it's not an isolated incident, and it's
Hmm.
not the worst incident, but it really had this kind of bad effect on me. And I felt like this is not the America I have known, right? Because I've known it to be this inclusive place that welcomes people from all different parts of the world. Because everybody in America, except for the native Indians, everybody is coming from somewhere else,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So, I mean, if I was to really say what really makes America special, I would say diversity and inclusion. That would be my answer. So that was a bad experience, but I'm hoping that now we are moving in a much better direction for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, such an experience like that, I mean, to completely, um, you know, flip your world completely around, like the experiences that you had in America and, this whole perception, and you particularly just being able to feel safe in your hometown, having been in Silver Spring, and
Right.
for something like that to occur, I mean, I can imagine that was unbelievably frustrating, angering, and like you said, just scary,
Yes.
just scary.
Yeah.
Um, so would you say throughout 2016 and through 2020, as you felt sort of the tides were changing, um were there any like would you say like religious or educational institutions or anything where you felt you could share your sentiments, or things that were able to kind of like help you communicate what was going on?
Absolutely. I've been a very active member of the interfaith movement
Hmm.
in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, throughout my 14 years in the US. Yeah. And I got my citizenship back in 2000 and 2017. So, yeah, so for the last, what now, 4 years,
Hmm.
I'm an Egyptian American, proudly Egyptian, proudly American. Yes. So I've always been a member of the interfaith community in this area. And this is an excellent opportunity to find like minded people who understand where you're coming from. Especially, I've been a member of many different Jewish Islamic dialogue groups. Jewish Islamic Dialogue Society is one of them. Sisterhood of Salam Shalom is another one. Many
Hmm.
different groups that talks about this whole thing about different people coming from different faith traditions and
Hmm.
coming together in solidarity to stand with each other and to support each other if and when they actually face similar situations of feeling isolated or feeling profiled or threatened in any way, shape, or form. So, for example, just to give some concrete examples, in the case of the Muslim community, when there was the Muslim travel ban 1 and Muslim travel ban 2, that was very scary, of course, to have people who are banned from 7 Muslim majority countries coming into the United States. But at the same time, the positive side or the good side of things is there has been a lot of show of solidarity. So people would go out and they would say, this is a march against the Muslim travel ban. And I would see people from all walks of life, white, black, Latino, disabled, from LGBT community, from Jewish community, Christians, they're all coming out and saying, not under my name. We don't accept this kind of discrimination. This is unconstitutional. This is illegal. Muslims are welcome here. We are all Muslims today. And that really made me feel great. Even my
Hmm.
sisters, some of whom have not been in America, they
Hmm.
sent me messages like, oh, this is great. Like, as much as we were scared by the Muslim travel ban, we thought this is a horrible thing. As much as we love and respect and admire the kind of solidarity that was
Yes.
extended to the Muslim American community. And vice versa. For example, when there were attacks on other communities like the Jewish community, there are attacks on them in their own synagogues, right? The Tree of Life synagogue, the horrible shooting that happened there, or the desecration of certain, cemeteries.
Yes.
That was horrible. The Muslim community, the Muslim American community raised thousands and thousands of dollars. I think over $50,000 or $60,000 to support the Jewish American community in terms of overcoming all of these different ordeals and all of these different traumas. So you saw actual action. I call it always putting your faith in action, right? Putting your faith
Yes.
in action, a very important thing. Like whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, other religious tradition, I believe like we can pray and fast all we want, but truly the act that can really, really earn you, I think, the respect and the beauty of your own faith, and showing your beauty of your own faith is when you put your own faith in action. You take action. You take steps on the ground, actual steps to say, I'm going to stand up with you. I don't accept this kind of injustice, and I'm going to do something about it.
Yes.
And we saw that, extended from other communities to the Muslim American community. And we saw the Muslim American community also extending this kind of help and support to others. So I think at the end of the day, this is the beauty of America, in my opinion.
Yes, yes, that faith in action, that solidarity, that, people can come together when things, are, heading the wrong way, and when there is this source of negativity that can seem to, isolate, certain groups, and the fact that people can band together to, stand up for what is truly right and, fair. So
Right.
I'm happy to hear that, you felt during those instances that you had support and that you had opportunities where you could, talk to people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, looking ahead, now that things we are at today, would you say your sentiments, do you feel even now like things have changed? Do you feel maybe safer or a little bit more at peace with what's going on? How would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely share with you some of my recent articles. One of them was about a new dawn of hope for the American Muslim community, like American Muslims and Arab Americans living in the United States. They see in the new era, right, the Biden era, some dawn of hope actually for more equity, more justice, more equality, more inclusion and diversity. For example, we have 8 different Arab Americans who have been appointed in different positions in the new Biden administration. I believe 3 or 4 of them are women. So that is good. I mean, it's definitely not enough, but it's some steps in the right direction, right? And I always say it's a two-way street. So I say that, it's important for those in positions of power to always acknowledge the diversity and the inclusion of different groups and different minorities. It's also important for these groups to also try to participate more in public life and to be more engaged and to be more part and parcel, not just of their own small community, but the wider community at large. This is a very important point. It's important for me to be active within the Muslim American community and the Arab American community, but it's equally important for me to be active within the larger American community because I am an American citizen, right?
Yes.
So you have to be part of, for example, the Parent-Teacher Association. You have a neighborhood association, something that talks about residents in your own community. How do you make your community safer? How do you make the streets cleaner? How do you make sure that children are not bullied in schools, right? Something that goes beyond your own small community into the broader community. And I think that's really a very important thing. And I see some evidence of that happening. Just to give everybody credit, I believe it's really happening. For example, one of the papers, the projects I'm working on right now is about the Muslim American community's philanthropic work during the COVID-19 crisis.
Yes.
So I'm doing some research now, and I've not done research on this topic before. Right? I was invited to this group, and they said, we want a paper from you. I'm like, but I didn't do work on philanthropy. Like, I do work on activism, socio-political change. Said, no, we want a paper from you on this topic. So when I started to do the research and to actually interview members of the, the Muslim American community, I was really stunned by the amount of charity and philanthropy and activism and, the actual participation in different community activities and charity. It's been amazing. And really everybody rolled up their sleeves and worked very hard, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's amazing. And I hope it continues even beyond the pandemic and really go wider and really become, more inclusive, as I said, because at the end of the day, we are all part of the same country and we are all part of the same planet, right?
Yes.
So whatever I do is going to impact you, and whatever you do is going to impact me, whether we like it or not. It is an interrelated, interconnected world more than ever before. So if you think
Yes.
about challenges like security, climate change, bullying, right, profiling, racial discrimination, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, all of that, we can never look at it as an isolated problem,
Hmm.
an isolated issue. It's not. It's all interrelated. It's all interlinked. The world is becoming a smaller global village more than ever before. And we have to look at it this way. So we have to do our part as responsible citizens of this global world and this global village, which is interlinked and interrelated more than ever before.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I think particularly, social medias and other instances like that, I think, being able to utilize those you know, to our benefit, as, sometimes not the best things can come of them, and try to maintain that connectedness. And like you said, it's also interrelated, and that's something extremely important to remember. I think it's very easily to sort of isolate and kind of point fingers at one thing when it all impacts everything else as well.
Exactly. Like I just
So
want to jump in quickly here, Joe, and add a couple of things if you don't mind.
yes.
When I commented on, for example, the George Floyd incident in some of the Arabic-speaking media, like
Hmm.
BBC Arabic or TRT Arabic and others, recently France 24 and others, I
Hmm.
always said, like, when you talk about something like the George Floyd incident, you cannot detach it from the wider issue, right? You need to have reforms in laws, in the criminal justice system. You have to look at it within the broader issue of racial discrimination, injustice, as well as racism, sexism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, hatred for minorities, for people of color, and so on. You have to
Hmm.
contextualize it within the broader, context. You cannot look at it again as an isolated incident. That's a very important point. Another thing, when you said social media, I want to also comment on that quickly. As a professor of communication, a lot of the courses and classes I teach, as you know, is about social media and new media and digital media and all of that. And I always tell my students, think about these tools as just simply tools, right? It depends on how you are using them and for what purpose. It is true that you now have access like at your fingertips, right? You can have Professor Google give you answers to a lot of questions. Although I always say take it with a grain of salt, because Professor Google does not always necessarily give you the right answers all the time, right?
Yes.
But I mean, you have this ability to really Google information and get a lot of access to information. But hey, it can also be a double-edged sword. On one
Hmm.
hand, you can gain access to accurate, factual information, but on the other hand, you can also get a lot of stereotypical, skewed information, which is not accurate, which is not true, or even a lot of hate speech
Hmm.
and a lot of profiling of others and a lot of
Yes.
discrimination, a lot of Islamophobia, a lot of xenophobia. All of that is also going on online. So be very careful how you are using these tools, because they can be a double-edged sword. It depends very much on how you are using them and for what purpose.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely those echo chambers can develop, right? Those can, you can definitely you know, people
You
can.
still remember the echo chambers from the course you took with me, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. I think I always keep that in mind in perspective, when I hear points from other individuals that, let's say, I don't necessarily agree with, and the one of the considerations is, okay, based on the environment that they grew up in, rather than me getting initially angry, upset. Okay, did they grow up in an echo chamber? Is this something that was a result of their upbringing that wasn't necessarily inside, part of their control?
Correct.
So
Yes, very true. Yeah.
yes, ma'am. And so would you say then that a lot of those echo chambers perhaps are more present in, like, what would be the, digital world rather than in the, physical world? Would you say that's probably an accurate
Yeah,
assumption? Yeah.
that's an excellent question. I think it's present in both the real
Okay.
world and also the social media world, but I
Mm-hmm.
think they get worse in the social media world.
Mm-hmm.
Social media world, instead of opening a platform where people can become smarter and reach this, middle ground of deliberation and
Mm-hmm.
smart, intelligent dialogue and trying to learn from each other, they really kind of lean more towards going to the extremes.
Yeah.
The process of polarization whether it's political polarization or social polarization, becomes amplified and it becomes much worse on social media. Why? Because people use these social media platforms as weapons,
Hmm.
right? So it's my weapon to try to attack my opponent. So just like you said now, it becomes an echo chamber, and that echo chamber becomes even more enforced on social media, and people start to move more towards the extremes. So the
Hmm.
extreme voices become the louder voices.
Yes.
Now, where are the middle ground people, the wiser people who are speaking, with reasoning and with
Hmm.
logic? They get somehow either swept under the rug, or they don't have a place in these platforms. The louder voices, which are
Hmm.
usually the more extreme voices, are the ones that are more dominant and more louder and more amplified on social media. And that is something
Hmm.
that myself and my co-author, Professor Muhammad Nawawi, who's also an Egyptian American, in our first book, Islam.com, Contemporary Islamic Discourses in Cyberspace, we talked specifically about this point, and it was one of the main findings of our research. One
Hmm.
of the main findings of the book was the fact that people are really either ending up with some kind of unanimous, conformity. They just confirm, like, everything you say is like, absolutely, Joe
Hmm.
is my friend. So every time he posts something, I'm going to like it and I'm going to just tweet it and retweet it because we are buddies and we like each other.
Hmm.
We are not becoming any smarter because I'm just basically retweeting and reposting and resharing without any kind of critical thinking. Or the opposite, the extreme opposite, like, oh, now you dare to actually criticize me, or you dare to say something different from what I believe. Now I'm going to use my Twitter and I'm going to use my social media as my weapons to get back at you. And we're going to enter into this kind of online fights and digital, cyber wars,
Yes.
and just keep attacking each other, and it's going to get from bad to worse,
Hmm.
right? So that is really how it works. So unfortunately, the echo chambers exist in real life, but they get
Yeah.
much worse and much more amplified and magnified, I should say, on
Hmm.
social media. Now, we as educators, as parents, as social media experts, as professors, as people who are dealing with this whole domain, we should really be aware of these whole phenomena and
Hmm.
think of ways through which we can counter these dangerous processes of polarization
Hmm.
and division and fragmentation, and think of some more healthy and productive ways for people to engage with social media in a much more productive and much more constructive way.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I think it's either, like you said, just kind of mindlessly retweeting, supporting, what somebody may saying while not taking a critical, without giving a critical look. But then when somebody does give it a critical look, traditionally it turns into, polarization, which then emotion gets involved, and it can go down south. And like you said, go from bad to worse to worse.
Right.
Um, so I think that's an out a very, very important point. And so one thing I want to touch on is the specific immigration process that you had when you returned to teach at the University of Maryland. And was that a relatively smooth process? Did you encounter any, speed bumps along the way? If you could talk about that a little, please.
Yeah, I came as a professor at the University of Maryland. So I came under what is called the H-1B visa, which really
Hmm.
means like basically distinguished, what do you call it, distinguished labor or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the H-1B visa, which really offers a very smooth, road to get
Hmm.
your green card and your permanent residency in the United States. So because I came for this job, basically the university took care of all the logistics in terms of applying for my residency,
Hmm.
making sure everything is okay. And I
Hmm.
should just tell you a funny anecdote here. Now,
Uh-huh.
mentioned that something really funny. Basically, when I worked with the University of Qatar, they have this system there, which is like in Gulf countries. I believe it's in Gulf countries only,
Hmm.
where your income is like tax free, and the university would also give you a place to live. Like basically, they pay for your own residency, like for your own place of living, and they give you airplane tickets for you and your family. Like when you come initially, but also every year when you go on vacation.
Hmm.
So when I applied for a position at the University of Maryland, right, and they told me that I was selected for the position, so I wrote to the department chair at the time, and I said, thank you so much for selecting me for this position. I just have a few questions to ask you. Like my first question is, like, I assume that of course the University of Maryland is going to give me a place of residence. It's going to be paid by the university, like basically you're going to pay for the apartment or the house
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
which I'm going to live. And he replied, like, no, sorry, we don't do that here in America. And I was like, okay. And I sent him another email and I said, oh, so I assume that, the University of Maryland is also going to provide aeroplane tickets like every year for me and for my family members every year to go
Yeah.
back to Egypt, like for vacation. He
Yeah.
replied, no, sorry, we don't do that either in America. So I sent him back. I said, okay, I assume that my income is going to be tax free, of course, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
assume that. At that time, he said, sorry, no, that's not the case. And only criminals don't pay taxes in the United States.
Oh my, oh my
It's like,
goodness.
like, oh, okay, sorry. So I guess I was asking the completely wrong questions all along. Like it's amazing how I still got the job after asking him these three questions. Like
Yes. Oh my
it just
goodness,
shows
that's
like
hilarious.
completely different expectations. Just I assumed that this would be the kind of system
Yeah.
that's also going to be applied in the US, and of course
Mm-hmm.
it's completely different system with completely different rules, completely different regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it just tells you this kind of like basically cross-cultural or intercultural encounter where the two parties are coming from two completely different places and two different expectations as to what
Yes.
the arrangement is going to be like, right? So, but despite all of that, despite the absence of all of these factors, I still don't regret the decision of coming to Maryland 14 years ago.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that because I'm so glad that I had, the opportunity to take your class and that my peers have had the opportunity to take your classes and, all of the publications that you've had and your, books and audio and video resources and stuff like that. So
Thank you so much.
very, very, very grateful.
Thank you.
Well, if you have any final points or final things you'd like to add, feel free to go ahead. Um,
I just want to end really with saying it's very important for academics and scholars to play the role of public intellectuals. And when I say the word public intellectuals, I mean creating a viable and strong link between the kind of academic research that we are producing in books, in journal articles, in publications, as well as delivering like, conference presentations about all of that stuff, which is awesome. And it's pretty much who we are and what we should be doing as academics. But it's equally important for us to be also publicly visible and to try to be more publicly engaged in different walks of life. Like I said, I mentioned interfaith activism,
mhm.
being part of interfaith groups, which is very, very important. Public appearances, media appearances, writing, articles in the public press or the popular press. Being able to also have your own, media, television interviews. The dream is still living on, as I told you before, of having my own, television show and all of that.
Yes.
I believe it's important to create this kind of bridge. We
Yes.
are not just glued only or confined only to our computers and our own offices, which is like where we spend most of our time.
Mhm.
But being also public intellectuals means that we're able to deliver this kind of knowledge and this kind of expertise to a much wider and broader audience that I believe should hear the kind of important stuff that we need to talk about and we need to say. This is very important. So I always encourage all my colleagues, like when you're doing something important in your own books, in your own research, your own journal articles, teaching about it in the classroom, writing about it in your own research, that's awesome. But I would also love for everyone to be engaged more in this type of quote unquote the public intellectual role, which is equally important in terms of reaching out to the wider community and reaching out to the wider
Mhm.
public and informing them and enlightening them about all of these important issues, especially now with all the challenges going on, socially, politically, culturally, affecting minorities, affecting minority groups. I believe that this role is really, really important. I was very proud and really, happy to receive the Communicator Impact Award from the University of Maryland in 2019, specifically for this role of writing op-eds and writing articles in the popular press and popular media and interviews on issues related to human rights violations, freedom of the press, the dangers that journalists face in different parts of the world. I was also very proud to receive the NCA, the National Communication Association, first award from the Spiritual Communication Division on community activism and community engagement. I believe that these are important things that are equally important for us as academics and scholars and writers and teachers to actually engage in, because that is a very important role that we should not overlook.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and it's all coming together why you called your program the bridge, because truly how important that is if we have all of this outstanding research and relevant information, but it's, posed in such a way that maybe it doesn't it doesn't make sense, or it can't be easily implemented to have, like you said, the academic intellectuals to act as that bridge in between, okay, bringing the information to the people so that it's digestible and makes
Exactly.
sense.
And if scholars and experts don't play this role, then you're going to have a vacuum.
Yes.
And this vacuum can be filled by the wrong people, the people who are not necessarily experts on these particular topics, and maybe they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't have the kind of the correct tools, and then they fill the air time with a lot of stuff which may not be necessarily relevant or important, or even in some cases, unfortunately, can be destructive or harmful. Like if they
Yeah.
themselves harbor the wrong ideas, or they are very much racist, or stereotypically influenced by certain narrow-minded ideas, then you're giving them all of this space, right? And then the right people who have the right knowledge and the right expertise, they're absent from the picture, and they're not filling this vacuum. So that's why I believe this role of public intellectual is extremely important for this particular reason.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for providing your wonderful perspective and knowledge regarding the digital world and everything going on, and immigration process, and just how figuring out this complicated world and how we can all work together to try to make things better for each other. So
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure. You're one of my best and most brilliant students I've had. So I was not the least surprised when you sent me these excellent questions. You put them so well. They were very well researched. You obviously did your homework about me, about my background and who I am before putting together these questions. And I really enjoyed this opportunity. Thank you so much.
all right. Thank you, Professor Khamis.
Thank you. Thank you so much.